Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into some really fascinating stuff you've all sent in about Kamma.
Hmm.
Specifically, we're going to go beyond the basics. You want to explore how Kamma shapes our experience, and even more intriguing, how it can
Yeah,
be brought to an end.
right?
So are you ready to unravel this for us?
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's both it's a profound topic
Yeah.
and also incredibly relevant to our lives,
Yeah.
So I think it's a
Mm.
really good thing to dive into and see what we can uncover together.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with what we usually hear about Kamma. Like, good actions lead to good results, bad actions lead to bad.
Right.
Pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But in the material you sent, there's this hint of something more, like a fourth kind of Kamma.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
You're right. So that is often how karma is presented. Like just those two, good and bad. But it's actually much more nuanced than that. And you've hit upon a key point, which is this fourth type of karma that actually leads to the ending of karma itself.
Whoa. Okay, so not just good or bad Kamma, but a way to step off the karmic merry-go-round
Yeah.
entirely?
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about how that works?
Sure. It all comes down to intention. So the Buddha taught that karma isn't just about our physical actions. It's about the mental state behind them. The intention, the thought, the motivation, all of that plays a crucial role.
So it's not just what you do, but why you do it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And the source material really emphasizes that intention piece, like really over and over. So what does that mean for someone trying to end Kamma? What do they have to do?
It means cultivating a completely different kind of intention.
Okay.
One that is free from greed, aversion, and delusion.
Okay.
It's about acting from a place of wisdom and compassion.
Okay.
This is how we begin to chip away at the karmic cycle.
So it's like an internal shift, like rewiring our motivations in a way.
Yeah.
But hold on. What about all those classic narratives we hear about with Kamma?
Right.
You know, past lives, cosmic justice, all that. Don't those play a role?
They can be helping those narratives, and
Yeah.
they're very common ways of
Yeah.
understanding karma. But to truly grasp the end of karma,
Okay.
we need to move beyond them.
Seriously, why aren't those ideas enough?
Well, they're not wrong. It's just that they keep us thinking in terms of self and other
Yeah.
being and non-being.
Okay.
And those frameworks, while they're very familiar, they can actually
Yeah.
create a barrier to truly understanding how karma can end.
Okay. You've definitely got my attention. So if those stories aren't the key, what is?
Wow.
What's the alternative that the source material points to?
Yeah. So it's about shifting our focus to the present moment, to our direct experience. The source mentions this term, radical phenomenology,
Okay.
which might sound intimidating,
Yeah, a little bit.
but it's really just about paying attention to what's happening right now without getting lost in stories or theories.
So instead of trying to figure out the meaning of a painting, we should just observe the brushstrokes, the colors, the textures, like experience it directly.
Exactly. And that's the power of mindfulness.
Yeah.
By bringing our attention to the present moment without judgment, we start to untangle the karmic knots.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that connects. But the source also talks about this concept of dependent origination.
Right?
Which seems really complex. It's like this intricate web of causes and effects. How does that fit in?
Yeah, so dependent origination is one of the most important teachings in Buddhism. And it's really about understanding that karma isn't a simple one-to-one equation.
Okay.
It's a chain reaction. One action leads to another, creating this complex web of interconnected causes and effects.
Right. So the source uses the analogy of a chain where each link represents a different factor that contributes to our experience.
Right.
And then it goes on to say that ignorance is like the first link, the root cause of it all.
Yeah.
So breaking free requires understanding this chain and seeing where we can intervene, I guess.
Exactly. By understanding the links in this chain of dependent origination, we can start to identify the points where we can break free, where our skillful actions can disrupt the cycle and get a different outcome.
And the source connects this directly back to the Four Noble Truths, right?
Yeah.
The Buddha's core teachings about suffering and its cause and the possibility of ending it and then the path to do so. So it seems like they provide like a roadmap for navigating
This whole
karmic landscape.
The Four Noble Truths are not just abstract concepts.
Right.
They're a practical framework for addressing the root cause of unskillful karma,
Okay.
which is suffering itself.
Okay.
So by understanding the nature of suffering, its causes, and the possibility of cessation,
Right.
we can begin to dismantle that chain of dependent origination.
So it's not just about avoiding negative actions, but about addressing the underlying conditions that give rise to them.
Precisely. It's a much more holistic approach. Recognizes the interconnectedness of all things.
And the source tells this amazing story about the Buddha's own awakening,
Yeah.
which it says serves as the ultimate proof that karma can end. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So the Buddha's awakening is the most powerful testament to the possibility of liberation from suffering. The source describes this moment as all experience growing cold as old Kamma runs its course.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful imagery.
Yeah.
So it's like reaching a state of perfect balance where the karmic scales finally come to rest. But how does this relate to us? Like, why should we care about ending karma in our everyday lives? Why is that important?
Well, while complete liberation might seem like a very distant goal,
Right.
understanding Kamma empowers us to make more skillful choices right now.
Okay.
Even small shifts in intention can create ripple effects, leading to greater happiness and freedom in the present moment.
So it's not about waiting for some future enlightenment, but about using this knowledge to improve our lives today.
Exactly. And it highlights the practical relevance of the Buddhist teachings. They offer a path to greater well-being regardless of our spiritual aspirations.
Okay, so we've established that those classic narratives about karma might not be the whole picture.
Right.
But I have to say it's kind of hard to let go of those familiar ideas. They're very compelling.
Right.
And the source talks about how the Buddha himself had to abandon certain ways of thinking to fully grasp the end of karma. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So it's about letting go of the tendency to get caught up in stories, whether it's about past lives, cosmic justice, or even our own personal narratives.
Right.
These stories, while they can be very tempting, can actually distract us from the direct experience of the present moment.
So it's like trying to understand the ocean by just reading a book about it.
Yeah.
You know, you can learn a lot, but it's not the same as actually feeling the waves crashing against you.
Exactly. To truly understand the end of Kamma, we need to dive into the ocean of our own experience.
Okay.
And that's where this phenomenological approach comes in.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this ties together.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about, how this fourth type of karma, this path to liberation, plays out in our everyday lives. Like, what does it look like to actually cultivate skillful karma?
So it starts with mindfulness.
Okay.
With paying attention to our intentions before we act, recognizing the motivations behind our thoughts, words, and deeds. It's about creating space for wise consideration before we react.
So it's not about becoming some kind of like saint overnight, but about just making conscious choices.
Yeah.
Being more deliberate in our actions.
Exactly. It's about bringing awareness to every aspect of our lives. And the source emphasizes that this is a gradual process. It takes time, patience, and persistent effort.
Kind of like training for a marathon.
Right.
You don't just wake up one day and run 26 miles. It takes consistent training and dedication.
That's a great analogy. And just as with marathon training, there will be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But the key is to keep going.
Right.
To trust in the process and the transformative power of skillful action.
This is all incredibly insightful, but the source also mentions something that kind of blew my mind, which is that even our sensory experiences, the way we perceive the world around us, are shaped by karma.
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, this is a profound insight that highlights the pervasive influence of karma. The Buddha taught that everything we experience, even the seemingly objective world around us, is filtered through the lens of our own past actions. Our perceptions are colored by our karmic conditioning.
So it's like we're all wearing karma-tinted glasses that shape how we see the world.
In a way, yes. But the good news is that we can learn to clean those glasses, so to speak, to refine our perceptions through skillful action.
So it's not just about affecting future experiences, but also transforming our present perception of reality.
Precisely. By purifying our intentions and actions, we gradually purify our perceptions as well. We start to see the world with greater clarity and wisdom.
Wow. That's pretty inspiring. It suggests that even our most fundamental experience of reality is not fixed but valuable, subject to change through skillful karma.
Exactly. And it underscores the transformative potential of the path that the Buddha laid out.
This brings us to another concept that's mentioned in the source, unbinding. The ultimate cessation of karma. And it sounds like a state of complete liberation beyond the cycle of birth and death. Can you tell us more about what that means?
Yeah. So This is a very challenging concept to grasp because it transcends our ordinary experience of reality. But the Source describes it as a state of perfect peace.
Okay.
Free from all suffering and attachment.
Okay.
It's the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path.
It sounds almost unimaginable, like a state of just pure bliss.
Yeah, it's often described in those terms. But it's important to remember that language is limited when it comes to describing such a profound experience.
Yeah.
The Buddha himself used various metaphors and analogies to try to convey a sense of what unbinding entails. But ultimately, it's something that can only be realized through direct experience.
So it's like trying to explain the taste of chocolate to someone who's never tasted it before.
Right.
Words can only go so far.
Exactly.
But the Source also provides some clues about how unbinding manifests in the world.
Right.
For example, it mentions that the Buddha, upon achieving enlightenment, saw that all phenomena are impermanent, subject to constant change. He also realized that there is no separate self, no enduring entity that experiences the world.
Right.
So unbinding involves a fundamental shift in perspective, a radical change in how we perceive ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about letting go of all our attachments, our clinging to ideas of self and permanence, and recognizing the interconnected nature of reality.
Okay, now I know that the Source emphasizes that the path to unbind is not easy. It requires tremendous effort, discipline, and dedication. But I'm curious about, the rewards along the way. Are there benefits to cultivating skillful Kamma, even if we don't achieve, full enlightenment?
Absolutely. So the Source is very clear that even small steps on the path can bring greater peace, happiness, and freedom in our daily lives.
Okay.
As we cultivate mindfulness and skillful intentions, we naturally become more kind, compassionate, and understanding. We create more harmonious relationships with ourselves and others.
So it's not just about some distant future goal, but about improving the quality of our lives right here, right now.
Precisely. And that's what makes the Buddha's teachings so relevant and practical.
Okay.
They offer a path to greater well-being, regardless of our spiritual aspirations.
Okay. I'm starting to get a sense of the transformative power of skillful Kamma.
Yeah.
But what about those who might be skeptical? What would you say to someone who doubts the existence of Kamma or the possibility of its end? What would you say to those folks?
I'd first acknowledge that skepticism is a healthy part of any intellectual inquiry.
Right.
The Buddha himself encouraged his followers to question everything, to not blindly accept his teachings. But I'd also point out that Kamma is not a matter of blind faith.
Okay.
It's a principle that can be observed and tested in our own lives.
So it's like a scientific experiment.
Yeah.
We can try out the principles of skillful action and see the results for ourselves.
Exactly. The Buddha presented his teachings as a set of hypotheses to be investigated and verified through personal experience.
Okay.
And millions of people over the centuries have attested to the transformative power of these teachings.
That's a compelling argument. It suggests that the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. We can experience the truth of Kamma through our own actions and intentions.
That's the beauty of the Buddha's teachings.
Okay.
They're not based on dogma or blind faith, but on direct experience and observation.
This is all incredibly insightful, but I'm also curious about how we can apply these teachings to our modern lives. The world today is full of complexity and challenges. So how does the concept of Kamma help us navigate these kind of turbulent times?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the teachings on Kamma offer a timeless wisdom that can be applied to any situation, regardless of the era.
Right.
In today's world, where we're constantly bombarded with information and stimuli, the practice of mindfulness becomes even more crucial.
Okay.
It helps us to stay grounded, to make wise choices, and to cultivate a sense of inner peace amongst the chaos.
So in a way, Kamma provides a framework for ethical decision-making.
Yeah.
In a world where ethical guidelines can often seem blurred.
Exactly. It reminds us that our actions have consequences.
Right.
Not just for ourselves, but for others as well.
Okay.
It encourages us to act with compassion, understanding, and a sense of responsibility.
This has been incredibly illuminating, but you know me, I love a good story.
Right.
And the Source mentions a particularly poignant teaching where the Buddha compares the tears we've shed over countless lifetimes to the water in the 4 great oceans. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So it's a very powerful teaching that highlights the immensity of suffering we experience due to our own unskillful actions.
Okay.
The Buddha's point is that we've been trapped in this cycle of birth and death for far too long.
Yeah.
And it's time to wake up and seek liberation.
Wow, that's a pretty sobering image. It really puts our everyday struggles into a much larger perspective.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds us that we have a choice.
Yeah.
We can continue to perpetuate the cycle of suffering, or we can choose to break free.
And that's where the fourth type of Kamma, the path to liberation, comes in again, right?
Yes.
It's not just about reducing suffering. It's about ending it altogether.
Precisely.
The Buddhist teachings offer a path to complete freedom, not just from the suffering of this life, but from all future suffering as well.
Right.
Now, the source mentions that the Buddhist teachings on Kamma were shaped not just by his insights into rebirth and the workings of the cosmos, but also by his own experience of unbinding, the cessation of Kamma. Can you elaborate on how that experience informed his teachings?
Yeah, so this is a crucial point that highlights the experiential basis of the Buddha's teachings.
Right.
So he wasn't just theorizing about Kamma.
Right.
He had directly experienced its cessation and the profound liberation that comes with it.
Okay.
And that experience gave his teachings an authority and authenticity that set them apart from the other philosophical schools of his time.
So it's like the difference between reading about a foreign country and actually traveling there. You can have all the book knowledge in the world, but it's no substitute for the direct experience.
Exactly. The Buddha's teachings were grounded in his own profound realization of the nature of reality.
Okay.
And that's what gives them such lasting power and relevance.
This is all incredibly illuminating, but I'm also curious about how the Buddha used different modes of discourse, such as narratives, cosmological explanations, and phenomenological analysis to teach about Kamma. Can you shed some light on that?
So the Buddha was a master communicator
who
tailored his teachings to the specific needs of his audience. He recognized that different people learn in different ways, so he used a variety of approaches to convey his message.
Okay.
Sometimes he used stories. Sometimes he used cosmological frameworks. And sometimes he used more analytical, phenomenological language.
So he was like a master chef who could adapt his recipes to suit different palates.
That's a great analogy. The Buddha's goal was to help people understand the truth of Kamma and the path to liberation, and he used whatever means were most effective in achieving that goal.
The source emphasizes the importance of conviction in the principle of Kamma as like a working hypothesis for those seeking liberation. Why is that conviction so crucial?
Conviction plays a vital role in the Buddhist path. It's not about blind faith. It's about a deep understanding and acceptance of the principle of Kamma as a fundamental law of the universe. And this conviction fuels our efforts, inspires us to practice diligently, and sustains us through the inevitable challenges we encounter along the way.
So it's like the fuel that powers our spiritual journey.
Exactly. Without that conviction, we might give up easily or get sidetracked by doubts and distractions. But when we truly understand and accept the principle of Kamma, it becomes a guiding force that propels us towards liberation.
This makes a lot of sense, but the source all mentions that this conviction can deepen and evolve as we progress on the path. How does that happen?
As we practice mindfulness and cultivate skillful actions, we begin to see the fruits of those actions in our own lives. We experience greater peace, happiness, and freedom. And that firsthand experience strengthens our conviction, transforming it from a theoretical understanding into a lived reality.
So it's a virtuous cycle. The more we practice, the more we experience the benefits.
Exactly.
And the stronger our conviction becomes.
Yeah. It's a process of gradual awakening, a journey of self-discovery and transformation.
And this journey, as the source points out, involves both developing and abandoning. Can you explain what that means in the context of Kamma and liberation?
Sure. So developing in this context refers to cultivating wholesome qualities, such as mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. It's about training our minds, refining our intentions, and acting skillfully in the world. Abandoning, on the other hand, refers to letting go of unwholesome qualities, such as greed, hatred, and delusion. It's about uprooting the negative patterns that bind us to suffering.
So it's like weeding a garden. We need to nurture the flowers while removing the weeds.
That's a great analogy, and the source emphasizes that both developing and abandoning are essential aspects of the path. We can't achieve liberation simply by cultivating good qualities.
Okay.
We also need to let go of the negative tendencies that hold us back.
This makes sense. It's about creating like a more balanced and harmonious inner landscape, like fertile ground for spiritual growth.
Exactly.
Now, the source mentions that some people might be drawn to mindfulness and other Buddhist practices for their psychological benefits, like stress reduction and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
But it also suggests that conviction in Kamma is essential for those seeking full liberation.
Right.
Why is that?
So while mindfulness and other Buddhist practices can certainly bring about significant psychological benefits, the ultimate goal of the Buddhist path is to transcend suffering altogether.
Right.
And that requires a deep understanding and acceptance of Kamma as the underlying mechanism that perpetuates the cycle of birth and death.
So it's like the difference between treating the symptoms and addressing the root cause.
Yeah.
Mindfulness can help us manage stress and cultivate emotional well-being.
Right.
But to truly break free from suffering, we need to address the underlying karmic patterns that create those challenges in the first place.
And that's where conviction in Kamma becomes so crucial. It provides the motivation and the framework for engaging in the deep inner work that leads to liberation.
This all makes sense. But I'm curious about, how we can develop and strengthen our conviction in Kamma. Are there any specific practices or approaches that can help?
So one of the most effective ways to develop conviction is through personal experience. As we practice mindfulness, we start to see the cause and effect relationship between our actions and their consequences. We notice how skillful actions lead to greater peace and well-being, while unskillful actions create suffering for ourselves and others.
So it's like conducting a personal experiment, observing the results of our own actions and intentions.
And as we accumulate more of these experiences, our conviction naturally deepens. It becomes less of a theoretical concept and more of a lived reality.
Now, the source mentions that the Buddha's teachings on Kamma were not intended to be like a rigid, deterministic system. He acknowledged that there are many factors that contribute to our experiences, including physical laws, environmental influences, and the actions of others. So how does Kamma fit into this complex web of causality?
So the Buddhist teachings on Kamma don't deny the existence of other causal factors. He acknowledged that our lives are shaped by a multitude of influences. But he emphasized that Kamma, our own intentional actions, plays a primary role in shaping our experiences, particularly our mental and emotional states.
So it's not about saying that Kamma is the only cause,
right,
but that it's a significant and influential factor.
Precisely. And the source points out that understanding Kamma doesn't negate the importance of taking responsibility for our actions in the present moment.
That's a crucial point. It's not about, like, fatalistically accepting whatever happens as our karmic destiny.
No.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose our actions and intentions wisely. Exactly. Even in the face of challenging circumstances.
And that's what makes the Buddha's teachings so empowering. They offer a path to greater freedom and well-being. Not just in some future lifetime, but in the here and now.
This has been an incredibly insightful dive into the intricacies of Kamma. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one final point that the source raises, which is the limitations of language when it comes to describing ultimate reality. Can you elaborate on that?
So the Buddha recognized that language is a tool, a means of communication, but it's ultimately limited in its ability to grasp the vastness and complexity of reality, especially when it comes to describing profound spiritual experiences. Like unbinding.
Like unbinding,
He often used metaphors, similes, and analogies to convey a sense of what these experiences entail. But he also cautioned against mistaking the finger for the moon.
I love that.
So to speak.
It's like trying to describe the taste of a strawberry to someone who's never tasted one before. Words can only go so far.
Exactly.
And the source reminds us that the ultimate goal is to transcend language altogether and experience the truth of Kamma directly through our own mindful actions and intentions.
Exactly.
So it's not about getting bogged down in philosophical debates, but about putting the teachings into practice and seeing the results for ourselves.
Precisely. The Buddhist teachings are not meant to be a set of beliefs to be accepted on faith, but a path to be walked and a truth to be realized through personal experience.
This is a really profound point. It suggests that the true understanding of karma lies not in intellectual analysis, but in lived experience, in the transformative power of mindful action.
Exactly. The Buddhist teachings invite us to become active participants in our own awakening, not passive recipients of dogma or belief.
This has been an incredibly enriching exploration of karma, but before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your final thoughts on this profound concept.
Well, I think the most important takeaway from our deep dive into Kamma is that it's not a fixed fate or a predetermined destiny.
Right.
It's a dynamic process that we can influence and transform through our own choices and actions. And that recognition is incredibly empowering. It reminds us that we have the ability to create a more positive and fulfilling future, both for ourselves and for the world around us.
That's a beautiful and inspiring message. It reminds us that we're not just passive recipients of karma, but active agents of change. So if we want to create a better future, we need to start by understanding how our present actions shape that future.
Exactly. It all comes back to intention, to making conscious choices that align with our values and aspirations.
And that brings us back to the fourth kind of karma, the karma that leads to the end of karma. Can you remind us what that looks like in practice?
It's about cultivating a different way of being in the world.
Okay.
It's about acting from a place of wisdom and compassion, rather than greed, aversion, and delusion. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things and understanding that our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for all beings.
So it's not about becoming some kind of perfect saint, but about making a conscious effort to live in a way that benefits ourselves and others.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that even small acts of kindness and compassion can have a ripple effect, creating a more positive and harmonious world.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, expert speaker. You've helped us understand karma not as some rigid cosmic law, but as a dynamic process that we can influence and transform through our own choices and actions.
It's been my pleasure. I'm always inspired by the wisdom and practicality of the Buddhist teachings.
And to you listening, you hope this deep dive has given you a new understanding of karma and its potential to shape your life. As you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on your own intentions and actions. How can you cultivate more mindfulness and skillful karma in your own life? How can you use this understanding to create a more positive and fulfilling future for yourself and for all beings? The journey to liberation starts with a single step, a single act of awareness, a single choice to act with wisdom and compassion.
May your path be filled with peace and understanding. Yeah. The Buddhist teachings are not meant to be a set of beliefs to be accepted on faith, but a path to be walked and a truth to be realized through personal experience.
This is a really profound point. It suggests that the true understanding of karma lies not in intellectual analysis, but in lived experience, in the transformative power of mindful action.
Exactly. The Buddhist teachings invite us to become active participants in our own awakening, not passive recipients of dogma or belief.
This has been an absolutely fascinating deep dive into karma, but before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something that really struck me in the Force material. It mentions that even our sensory experiences, the way we perceive the world around us, are shaped by karma. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Right. That's a key point that often gets overlooked in discussions about karma.
Yeah.
It suggests that our experience of reality isn't objective, but rather it's filtered through this lens of our past actions and intentions. Our karmic conditioning influences how we see the world, how we interpret events, and even how we experience physical sensations.
It's like we're each wearing a pair of karma-tinted glasses that color everything we see.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of recognizing those filters and understanding how they shape our perceptions. The good news is that through mindfulness and skillful action, we can start to polish those lenses, so to speak, and see the world with greater clarity and wisdom.
So it's not just about creating a better future, but also about experiencing the present moment with more awareness and understanding.
Exactly. By understanding Kamma, we can start to see the connections between our past actions, our present experiences, and our future possibilities. It gives us a framework for making wiser choices, cultivating more wholesome qualities, and ultimately creating a more positive and fulfilling life.
And that brings us back full circle to the fourth type of karma, the karma that leads to the end of karma. Can you remind us what that entails and how we can start cultivating it in our own lives?
Absolutely. As we've discussed, the fourth karma is the path to liberation from the cycle of suffering. It's about purifying our intentions, acting with wisdom and compassion, and ultimately transcending the limitations of our karmic conditioning. It's not a quick fix, but rather a gradual process of awakening.
So it's not about simply avoiding bad actions, but about actively cultivating wholesome qualities.
Precisely. It's about shifting our focus from self-centered desires to a more expansive sense of interconnectedness. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for all beings.
And that recognition, as you've pointed out, can be a powerful motivator for change.
Absolutely. When we truly understand the nature of Kamma, we realize that we're not just passive victims of fate, but active participants in creating our own reality. And that realization can be incredibly liberating.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. You've given me a much deeper appreciation for the complexity and nuance of Kamma.
It's been my pleasure. It's always a joy to explore these profound teachings.
And to you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you a new understanding of Kamma and its potential to shape your life. As you go about your day, we encourage you to reflect on your own intentions and actions. How can you cultivate more mindfulness and skillful Kamma in your own life? How can you use this understanding to create a more positive and fulfilling future for yourself and for all beings? Remember, every choice we make, every action we take is an opportunity to create a ripple effect that extends far beyond ourselves. The journey to liberation starts with a single step, a single act of awareness, a single choice to act with wisdom and compassion.
May your path be filled with peace and understanding.